안녕하세요. 여보세요. 감사합니다. Okay, we're back with the next album, Signal. At least in the order that I'm going in. I was actually, let me take a quick look. Since we did Twice Coaster Lane 1 and 2, Signal on to the next album. Now the hashtag Twice EP, that being basically a album of Japanese versions of some of the singles that have been previously released on the albums before. I will listen to those, but I don't think I'll do basically an album review, because the only difference is going to be the language, you know what I mean? If the rest of the track is essentially the same, then most of the elements have already been kind of observed and described, you know what I mean? So that means that the next album is going to be Twice-to-gram, which is the I believe this is the first full-length studio album, you know. A couple of, well, let me see, Likey, nope, that's it. So only Likey has already been done, because there's a music video for that track, and so the reaction is already in that playlist. So that means we'll have 12 tracks to go through. Now for the Signal EP, Signal of course being the single that has the music video, so there is a reaction for Signal separate. And so what we're going to do is pick up the remaining 5 tracks on the album. I think we'll go through 2, 3, and 4. So we'll do 3 Times a Day, Only You, and Hold Me Tight. And for some of these, I really want to go just all the way through, but sometimes, I mean, YouTube's been pretty good, you know what I mean? At least for the most part, with album reviews and stuff. Even some of the longer ones that I've done, where I've done like the whole entire album. But most people kind of advise to do maybe 3 or like 4 songs at the most, which is why I've been splitting up the EPs, you know, with a couple different, like part 1 and part 2, at least a couple parts, just in case, right? It's just a little insurance policy, just in case YouTube doesn't want to chill and has some sort of block or something on the video or something like that. Everything gets a copyright claim on it, which is fine. Again, I don't have a problem with that, but it's just so that nothing ends up getting blocked, because that's the only one that kind of hurts, you know what I mean? Is when you so I had a couple of videos that were pretty long, not even necessarily like music reactions, but you know, you never know what's gonna catch the YouTube eye, and it'll end up just being blocked. And it's like, oh man, I can't. I've had a couple of songs where it's like, a couple of music videos where it's like, no, this it will it's, you know, it says it very clearly, like no one will be able to view your video, and it's like, oof, man. So I sat down for a while and put some time into that. So it happens, but we've had really good runs so far, especially with the Twice album reviews. So let's just kick it off. Let's go 3 Times a Day.
번째 어디 좀 나간다고 세 번째 잠들기 전에 good night 더도 말고 내가 원하는 건 하루에 세 번, 딱 세 번 그게 뭐가 되던데 그것도 못해 세 번, 딱 세 번 연락 좀 해봐보야 더 생각이 자꾸 많아지고 내 상상력은 점점 해피엔딩과 멀어지고 So bad 통화 한 번 하는 게 그렇게 어렵니 급한 몇 글자 쓰는 게 손가락 아프니 내 생각 나지도 않니 나보다 게임이 더 재밌나 봐 나 없이 혼자가 더 편한가 봐 너에게 도대체 나는 뭐야 첫 번째 이제 일어났다고 두 번째 어디 좀 나간다고 세 번째 잠들기 전에 good night 더도 말고 내가 원하는 건 하루에 세 번, 딱 세 번 그게 뭐가 되던데 그것도 못해 세 번, 딱 세 번 연락 좀 해봐보야 널 만나도 난 항상 외로워 이건 너무 왜 있을 때 잘해 만나기 전에 첫 번째 이제 일어난다고 두 번째 어디 좀 나가고 세 번째 잠들기 전에 good night 더도 말고 내가 원하는 건 하루에 세 번, 딱 세 번 그게 뭐가 되던데 그것도 못해 세 번, 딱 세 번 연락 좀 해봐보야 하루에 세 번, 연락 좀 해봐보야
So that's a really fun mix. It's like a nice laid back type of groove to it, almost like a light reggae type of rhythm. You know what I mean? The staccato string hits, at least that's what it sounds like. Those are coming in on upbeats, so it's the and, right? We're in 4, but you get that 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and, right? Percussive rhythms are like the track has a minimalist feel, especially in the beginning, the first like half of the verse phrase, right? Verse phrasing, that verse section. The rhythms really fill out in the second half of the verse section, like much busier, right? There's such a like a really full mix and variety of instrument sounds in this track. You know, there's some electric piano that's going on in there. It's like these little licks, little melodic bits here and there, little arpeggios and stuff. There's like a pretty clean electric guitar sound. There's a really cool rake in there with a lot of reverb, some healthy reverb on it, so it just gets this ambient sort of warm type of sound to it. The whole track actually feels very warm, like it's kind of steamy almost, you know, especially the way the percussion kind of plays out with its reverb and the hat work too. Especially, it's nice because it's like it's really cool, busy hat work, but it isn't that strong, like really persistent type of hat rhythm work that you get in like the trap sound. You know what I mean? This has a much more what you call it, like island type of dance rhythm to it. So it's really, really nice. The vocal work stays pretty light, you know, pretty high up in the falsetto ranges. Every part seems to be sort of a little bit softer, right? It's a really clean delivery. It's really nice. It's really pleasant. Especially the way, I believe it's the chorus section the way it kind of ends on a little, like it's a little lick there. Da, 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 da. It's such a nice, very, like, again, everything in this track sounds warm. It sounds tropical, doesn't it? It sounds like really, really warm. The bridge section was nice. It had a nice breakdown at the end, and then it gets that bell hit on the last beat, before going back into the chorus the section again, and for the out. And it's really fun. It's like it's so laid back. I think it's in the chorus section. There's some like some sort of tweaked vocals, like synth tweaked vocals that are going on that give it a little bit more of like a futuristic kind of a feel. So it's very warm. The bass, that sort of bouncy 808, it sounds very round, very bouncy, right? But overall it has a very, very almost relaxing, like warm island type of vibe to it. It's a really cool song. It's a wonderfully creative mix. All these digital little samples in there, and it's like little bits that just sort of pop up every so often, as if you were looking at some sort of rolling landscape, and every so often, there's some sort of flora that is very colorful and bright, and these different things that just sort of pop up in the overall landscape of what you're observing. It's really nice. It's really fun. It's really fun. All the sounds that are in that song. Okay, so let's go on to Only You. Only Nya. Nya. Only Nya. Only You.
늘 함께 있어줘 날
much bigger, right? Much brighter, like where 3 times a day had a little bit more of a minimalist type of structure to it. This is much more full, right? Big sustained synth sounds, synth chords, right? Filling out your rhythm sections. The really the feel of this song is established right at the beginning, within the first 3 or 4 measures, and it's all in the percussion, right? Because at first you get the downbeats, you get your 1, 2, 3, 4. Then you get upbeats, you get 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, and then you get the 16th note subdivision, 1 and a 2 and a 3 and a 4 and then it just, and that whole build up right at the beginning in the very first few measures, like it just, everything about this is like raised up, and then that bright synth sound comes in very, very big. There are some you have like the those synth chords that have a lot of sustain in them, and then there's another type of keys sound, like it probably is another synth, but it's definitely like a keyboard based type of instrument that's going on there, that is playing a little bit more on the that 8th note subdivision, some of those upbeats. It's the same chords, but it just has a slightly more busy type of rhythm, or subdivided type of rhythm that's going on. What was interesting about this song, it brought back firstly, it brought back a little bit of a rhythm that was used in the percussion in 3 times a day, when it starts to a little bit more of a swing, because it's sort of, you get like a downbeat, and then you'll get the next beat, but you also get an upbeat, so it kind of gets like a little bit more of a swing in it. But the second verse of this song has a very distinct flavor to it, almost like the lyric, the vocal part changes right to the rap style there, but the whole mix kind of shifts a little bit. It gets a little bit darker, is what I would say. Comes on very strong, very bright with the synth that's being used. Transition into the second verse, right after going through the chorus, which again is very big. Most of your backing vocals and harmonizations, a lot of that stuff is stacked in towards the right, so it gets panned right. Main vocal centered, lots of that synth rhythm, and some of the upper percussions panned left. Going into the second verse, first of all, the synth bass changes up there to this very buzzy, sort of wobbly type of bass sound that's going on. And then we have a total rhythmic shift, a dynamic shift, and a tonal shift, because the vocal changes up to the rap part there for that whole section. The entire second verse has its own, it's just different. Like it has a very noticeable and meaningful type of contrast to the rest of the song, but it, it's another one of these examples where it fits so well. It's just couched in the rest of the composition and the rest of the mix, right? It's all around it, but it's very, very different. It's a cool shift. I mean, for the really bright, almost sweet sound that you get at the beginning, and then as the song continues after second verse, going back into pre-chorus and chorus and all that. Even the pre-chorus was a little bit of contrast in terms of rhythm and tone, but once that chorus section comes back in, you're back in the song, like you're back in the same composition and everything, and it's really, really interesting the way that it works so well. Like that's vocals a little bit more dynamic in this song, right? We got not so much that sweeter upper register type of delivery. Definitely more chest voice, definitely more projection, more air behind the notes, right, that are being sung. Some really good control, some really good slides and bends as far as the vocal is what the vocal lines are doing. Quite a shift up. If you like, in other words, from track 2 to track 3, where track 2 kind of sort of relaxing, lulls you into that island warm type of groove, and then this one comes on in that build up right away. I'm telling you, the first like 3 or 4 measures of this song, the way the percussion builds up, it's like that's the vibe of this song. And then as soon as that bright, powerful synth comes in, that's it. That's where you're at, right? Which is what makes the second verse contrast, that shift, so interesting. And like, oh man, and the fact that it all just sort of gels together so well. It's very, very, it's just interesting to pull it off that way, to make that work, right? To make that stark contrast work, and have such continuity and have such a, like, keep the vibe, in other words, from, the first verse to the end. It's just quite a shift there. But very fun, very, very fun. I knew it was going to be some sort of power pop, type of anthem or whatever. It's right, establishes it right in the beginning, man, right at the start. Okay, Hold Me Tight. Sounding like it's going to be a bit more of a love song, no? I mean, could be. Let's see.
Hey! It's time to love. Listen. Hey you, 도대체 넌 어디를 보는지 I don't know. 눈치를 줘도 왜 눈치를 못 찾니? 원래 지난 건 알고 있어도 더 이상 난 못 참겠어. 나를 좋아하긴 하는 거니 I don't know. 몇 번이나 기회를 준 것 같은데 찾지를 못해. 내 손이 부끄러워도 있잖아. 꼭 집어 말을 해야만 알겠니? 어떻게 말하기 너무 쑥스러운데 Baby now 지금이어서 고백해. 거절하지 않아 걱정은 하지 마. Please hold me tight. 너를 안아봐. 안고 싶은 만큼 좋아하는 만큼 날 꼭 안아줘봐. Baby yes 보여줘봐 네 맘 내게 특별히 허락해줬잖아. 밤새도록 고민해. 넌 낮에 매일 내가 어떻게 더 이상 더 표현해. 머리가 아파 죽겠어. 아무리 생각해도 답이 없어. 남자답게 어서 내게 다가와. 너를 기다려 많이 기다려. 꼭 집어 말을 해야만 알겠니? 어떻게 말하기 너무 쑥스러운데 Baby now 지금이어서 고백해. 거절하지 않아 걱정은 하지 마. Please hold me tight. 너를 안아봐. 안고 싶은 만큼 좋아하는 만큼 날 꼭 안아줘봐. Baby yes 보여줘봐 네 맘 내게 특별히 허락해줬잖아. 내가 놀라지 않게 조심조심 하느라 그랬던 건 안다 하라. 그래서 더 네가 좋아. 내 두 눈을 바라봐. 너를 원하잖아. 그러니까 어서 내게 빨리 다가와서 나를 안아봐. 멈췄잖아.
Synth strings, that's what it sounds like to me. It sounds like some there's a couple of different synth string sounds that right at the end there, that the one that goes out on sort of a mid range, but then there's definitely like a higher range one that's playing. It comes on pretty strong in the beginning. Also, these wild synth drum fills. It's like or electric drum fill, electronic drums, right? Super fast. It sounds like triplet groups to me. 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 3. That it's really quite punchy. You know, like it. The sound is, it got an incredible envelope around each one of those hits. The fact that they're also like articulated in there. The vocal dynamic shifted from first verse to second verse. The first verse, they weren't the delivery was similar to like what was going on in 3 Times a Day, only it was happening in the lower registers as opposed to the uppers, right? The sort of higher pitched sound. This was sitting much lower, much more like around the sort of natural vocal tone, maybe slightly above it, but a little less air behind it, right? A little less like projection. It definitely popped more in the second verse. Didn't shift it up a little bit as far as range or pitch, but dynamically, definitely a little bit more behind it. The mix was quite interesting. I'd in the pre-chorus section, right, which it is fairly upbeat, so the pre-chorus passes kind of quickly, but I think as the main vocal line is approaching the end, it sounds like there's some harmonization that's going on. I'm hearing it mostly in the right, but what I think is happening, I have to listen to it again a few times. What I think is happening is that there are some backing vocal harmonizations, some oohs that are being sung, and it's a really nice, very cool sounding harmonization that's going on with the lead vocal that's going on over the top, right? But at the shift into the actual chorus section, if I'm hearing this correctly, right, or it might just be synth all throughout, but it sounds very much like there's backing vocal harmonies going on in pre-chorus. But as soon as we shift to chorus, it's like those same parts become synth parts, right? And it's such a cool transition, if I'm hearing this correctly, to go from the vocal harmonies, right? Because it's so smooth. It that's like, at first I'm like, no, that's sung. Those are oohs. And then when the chorus section comes on, I'm like, oh no, there's definitely synth going on there for sure. Like it's like they switch it up on you, like kind of, keep you like thinking, oh, and then without you knowing it, just the vocal gets swapped out for a synth, and it's so spot on, like it's so close in the frequency that it's like it takes a minute, and I'm like, wait a minute, that's synth now. That's what happened there. There's a very cool sort of like tremolo effect that's going on in the synth parts. There's two. One's a little bit higher, and it's on the 16th note subdivision, like the speed of it. It's matching because you can count it perfectly, right? And then there's another one that I think it's later on, like maybe after the second verse. But I hear it's a little bit lower, but it also has a little bit of a tremolo effect on it. Was it the bridge section, the sort of breakdown? Oh, that was really cool, man. Really cool. Again, like really a contrast. Totally shifts the feel of it. Like, I mean, you can really feel the whole vibe switch, right? And most of that, a lot of that stronger synth sound sort of drops out, and we get more of an emphasis on the drums and the bass for that part, which makes sense because you got a bit of a rap section going on over it in the vocals, so that all fits together quite nicely. But it's such a clearly defined shift in what's going on in the entire mix, right? But it's such a seamless transition in and out of that, and to pick back up those super fast punchy drum fills actually do a lot of work. Like, they carry a lot of the transitions in this song, because they just come on so strong, and they really help to, like, it's almost like a palate cleanse, if you will. Like, you know, once you get to that point, when you get that splash of, it's like, oh, okay, we're doing something else now. I mean, it's establishes it very, very strongly, right? Like, very, very definitely, you know, you're being pulled into this part now. There was there's really cool, almost like super high bell sounds or chime sounds, ding dong ding dong ding. Most of them were sitting very high in the mix, and I heard them more left, center to left. This is I think around pre-chorus section, or maybe chorus or post-chorus, but you have a lot of vocal harmonies and some synth harmonies that are doing work on the right, and then you have these really sweet sounding bells, notes that are going on, sitting very high and to the left of the mix predominantly. They kind of come into the center, and, you know, they sort of played around with the panning on that. But it's a very nice use of the space, for sure. Like, they're so, like, spread out as rhythmically, you know, that they're not grouped nearly as tight as any of the other parts of the mix, really. And that's a bit of a trick, because the tremolo effect on those synth parts is like, it's really just a sustained whole note. It's really just like hitting one key for 1 2 3 4, 1 2 3 4, 1 2 3 4. But because that tremolo oscillates, like, you know, the sort of subdivision that it's tuned to, right, as far as the speed, gives you this impression that it's actually, you know, more than that that's going on, in other words. But it's really just the tremolo effect that's on there. But those bell hits, they're so spread out. Like, it's, you know, just this sparkly sort of glistening thing that is sprinkled over the top. It's a really, really cool use of space, like, within the mix, you know, the space that you create when you are putting all of these sounds into their respective places, you know. But it's very, very fun. This, because I have to remember, like, okay, signal, right? And this, so far this whole album seems to make use of that synth sound, because, like, signal like it totally does that, you know, like, the synth is, like, central to what the composition is, really. But definitely, you know, off of that, it's the overall mix, right? And it's just interesting because we're talking about these really electronic type of instruments, it's all an electrical signal. Like that's all it is. It's everything. And so it's a conceptual sort of expansion on that idea, on the idea of this electronic signal that occurs at a certain frequency, and it's actually being read by, the computer, and or if it's not the computer, then it's whatever sort of instrument that is then relaying that electrical signal through an out, like a line out to a monitor, or whatever the setup is. But it's a really cool way of doing that, because it's not too like on the nose, I guess. Like it's a really ingenious way of taking that as a concept and demonstrating it right through what the mix is engineered to accomplish, to actually do. And it's just, it seems to be a through line for like the rest of the album as well. At least that's what I'm really getting off of this, because they don't seem to be veering off. I made 3 times a day. That was the one that had the most different sounds in the mix, at least so far, right? A lot of the instrumentation in the mix in 3 times a day, definitely a different feel, right? But the rest of the songs, synth is very much a central part of the mix, which is cool. It's it's all fun to me. It's never about like one of the reasons that I enjoy Twice as much as I do is because they don't, like, there's no one thing that they do. Like they do everything. They do all different styles, all different sounds. You get everything. There's no place that they don't go, like as far as a musical styling or a genre or things like that. But so and I'm the same way. It doesn't matter to me what it is. It's just, does it sound good? And are they doing it for real? And as long as that's the case, then I'm there. Like, it doesn't matter to me what it is, or and Twice is, they're very much like, that's what they do. As some groups, and this is not even just K-pop, this is like forever. This has always been the thing. In fact, as far as popular music is concerned, this is like the way it started, is that people do a thing, they do a style, they do a genre, and they lean like completely into it, because people come to like, it's like, no, I'm listening to that because I know what I'm gonna hear. I want to hear that, so I'm gonna listen to this band or this artist or this group because I know that's what they're gonna do. They'll do it this way, they'll do it that way, but they're always doing the same thing. And this is not the case with Twice, and I guess I only mention that because I look for the through line of the album, right? And in this case, it seems to be synth, but the way it's approached is like every track sounds different. It's its own thing. Again, they do it this way, they do it that way, but the through line seems to be this concept of signal, right? Like, what is that? In this case, we're talking electrical signals that actually occur at certain frequencies, and depending on what you pass that frequency through, you get a certain sound that has its own characteristics, its own tone and its own timbre and its own pitch and its own dynamic level. And I don't know, I'm just trying to interpret the concept of it, and not so much subjective, you know what I mean? Because songs are subjective when they're written. There could be a love song, could be a breakup song, could be a, whatever it is, right? But objectively, I'm just thinking of like the sounds that I'm hearing. So I'm thinking that that's actually the through line, is this concept of what a signal is and what it does, which is just cool. I'm just trying to put it together myself, right? I'm trying to receive the signal, I guess, right? But very much it has a certain continuity to it. And it's just cool because Signal, the song, it's one of my favorite Twice songs, like hands down. Like, if I gotta make some kind of list or whatever, like top 10 Twice songs or something, like Signal's gonna be on it, right? Like it's gonna be there. Just, hey, I won't make no bones about it. Like Signal's one of my favorite Twice songs. And it's just cool. Like I've already said, going from The Story Begins to Page 2 to Twice Coaster and now to Signal, like you can see the trajectory of the group, right? From where they started to, like, the way they sort of develop and evolve over time and over the course of these different albums that get produced and everything. And it's just fun. It's a fun thing to really begin to experience, right? Like putting the albums down one after another, and okay, because you can definitely tell. You can, and then if you think about the more recent stuff, it's like, oh man, you can start to map it out. You can start to see the path that they take together, right, as a group. So that's just very fun. It's the fun that I'm having actually listening to all of the albums and everything, like that's kind of like how to sum it up. But that's enough rambling for this first part here, and we'll get back with the last two tracks on this album, Eyes, 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 and Someone Like Me. So that's what we're going to do next.